So thank you everybody for taking the time to join us today, where we take great pride in announcing to you Alert Sync 2.0, which is our biggest Alert Sync release since the beginning of Alert Sync, which is really, really cool. Just to kind of say hello, really, and introduce myself. I think quite a few of you guys know me already. I'm Bruce Cullen. I'm the Director of Products here at Cookdown, and I've been around Cookdown since the beginning, which is a nice place to start because we're going to do a bit of scene setting, taking you back to a conference from last year called Knowledge, which is ServiceNow's flagship conference, and it was in Vegas last year, which was large fun, as you can see from the pictures. But it's the reason why I'm sharing this is it's also the conference at which we launched Alert Sync for the very first time. And this last picture here in the middle is a picture of our stand from that event. And you can see, what the product had in it then from the list of features there. So this was back in May 2019. We have done a few releases since, quite a few releases, but none quite so big as obviously this initial version. So quite a few of these features obviously make up the core of the product. Today I hope we can, with Alert Sync 2, add a few more interesting and exciting features to that list. So let's crack on then. What's new with Alert Sync 2? So to explain this, I need to paint a picture for you quickly first. So imagine you have a server that's monitored with SCOM. It's got a load of bits and pieces on it that are being monitored, in addition to the Windows server itself, as you would expect. Doesn't really matter what. And for whatever reason, that server goes down. It happens from time to time. Any clues as to what's going to happen with all of the bits of monitoring on top of it? And SCOM? Yep, it's going to light up like a Christmas tree. And you'll get alerts for everything that is being monitored on that server. And with Alert Sync in version 1, you will get an incident for every single one of those alerts. Some customers will want this, but the vast majority of customers will not want this. They'll want just simply to be able to correlate the fact the server is down being the cause of all of these alerts and have a single incident for that. This issue gets sort of worse, obviously, if the cause of the server being down is that it was running on top of a hypervisor, and the hypervisor, which obviously will be hosting other machines, has gone pop as well. Because then you're going to have this same problem for every single server that runs on the hypervisor. With Alert Sync 2, we've fixed this issue. But the other thing that really pointed to us needing to do this is whenever we would have POC calls and demo calls, we would get questions like this. How do I get an incident, one incident for all the alerts from a server when it's down? How do I suppress alerts when the hypervisor gets killed? That kind of thing. Well, we are listening. The server down correlation feature is the biggest and most interesting feature, most exciting feature of Alert Sync 2. It's a single checkbox, as you can see from this little screenshot here, per incident creation rule that lets you just simply say, for this rule, when the server is down, correlate server down alerts, basically. So now, in this same scenario, if the hypervisor and all of its guests go down, you will obviously still get all of those alerts, but the first one of those alerts is likely to be the classic heartbeat failure or failed to connect to computer, the two alerts in question that we're interested in. So we'll raise an incident for that, and then all the rest will simply get associated to that same incident. So one incident for all of these alerts, which is great. Much better. Problem solved. Borat is happy. So next thing, which leads quite nicely on from the correlation feature, is what happens when SCOM alerts close. So when I used to demo Alert Sync, I used to show this slide, and I talked about when an incident is resolved, the SCOM alerts are closed off. That's still true, but I never talked about closing off the SCOM alert and what happens to the incident. Because in the back end, if you wanted to set that up, you had to write a script which looked like this. It's actually only the bottom of these two scripts. It's a relatively simple script, but the problem is the control for whether you use this script functionality was a single checkbox, and when you checked it, you had to then use the top script as well for the case of updating alerts, and you may not want to. And it's a relatively simple thing. So from Alert Sync 2, we have decided that we will bake this functionality into the UI. I didn't realize I still had that slide transition in there. That's fun. So now when on a per incident creation rule basis, you can say when a SCOM alert is closed, do this with the incident, put it into the resolved state or whatever state you so choose. This covers any sort of custom states in your ServiceNow instance too, which is great. When you use this with the correlation feature that I just mentioned, it means that all incoming SCOM alerts are correlated to that initial server down incident. But when the server down incident is sort of when the issue is fixed, basically, and that monitor is reset, all of the when the SCOM alert is closed, if that auto heals, let's say, then the incident is automatically going to be resolved. So nothing to do at all, which is great. The next thing to talk about is this thing. This thing was the bane of my life whenever we did trials. Disk space is low, SCOM alert. In Alert Sync 1, you'd have often conversations like this. In fact, seeing who's on today's webinar, I've had this conversation with some of you guys. So you'd have the conversation around, well, is this really an incident? ITIL says, no, this isn't really an incident. And the answer is, well, no, this shouldn't really be an incident. Okay, fair enough, Bruce. Can Alert Sync raise tasks? No, it can't. This thing caused much pain because it's a relatively simple thing to do. We just hadn't got around to actually doing this. But the good news is, in Alert Sync 2, we can now raise tasks. Hooray! So in incident creation rules, you can specify when an alert meets these conditions, raise a task or whatever type of thing you want to raise, a problem, change request, what have you, from a drop-down, which is really, really good. Really simple thing to implement as well, which gets reduces the pain there and means you can be ITIL compliant, fully ITIL compliant, which is great. Next thing to talk about is the case of resetting monitors. In particular here, focusing on those roll-up monitors, the aggregates and dependency monitors. So in this scenario here, we have a relatively simple roll-up monitor with underneath it 3 monitors. And the bottom one is red, unhealthy, which means we'll have an alert sitting somewhere. And with Alert Sync, we'd also have, therefore, an incident in ServiceNow. Where that incident is eventually sort of solved, we would close the incident as you would expect, and we would reset the monitor in SCOM, causing the alert to close. So you would expect that this roll-up monitor at the top would also go green, right? Well, not necessarily. In a few cases, roll-up monitors themselves generate alerts. And all right, fine, no problem. So let's just get this incident resolved too. So we'd resolve this incident. But this roll-up monitor here would stay not healthy, and therefore the alert in SCOM would stay open, fail essentially. This was another sort of issue for us in the early days. But with Alert Sync 2.0, it's a slightly different case. Now, if you resolve an incident that has come from a roll-up monitor, we will programmatically reset all of the unhealthy monitors underneath the roll-up monitor and then reset the roll-up monitor itself, meaning that the alerts themselves are closed off. So that case is now sort of catered for, which is great because it's one of those sort of irritations to go through a list of alerts and see some that you've actually actioned by resolving those incidents but haven't had their monitors reset. So more detail on this. So not only do we support the resetting of the roll-up monitors themselves, but also where they're nested, that's supported. We basically traverse the tree, so we can reset roll-up monitors that are nested as well. It's configurable, so you can say whether you want this behavior or not. We have the ability to reset aggregate and dependency monitors just for the sake of clarity, including the slightly weird and wonderful case where you've got aggregate and dependency monitors nested within each other, which is possible in SCOM, but it's definitely not common or recommended. But there we go, also supported. Moving on. Quite a lot of things that were relatively simple in Alert Sync 1 required scripting, which wasn't typically a problem, but did mean it was more work to kind of get going with Alert Sync, especially if you had a large number of incident creation rules. In Alert Sync 2, we've removed some of the need to script. In Alert Sync 1, The UI for a creation rule looked a little bit like this, the way things used to be. So you had some bits and pieces you could set on the incident, like the CI and the assignment group. In Alert Sync 2, this is a much larger list, essentially. So we can now set the impact and urgency. We can actually specify who the alert is assigned to. We can obviously specify the type of record. Is it an incident we want? Is it a task, etc.? We can actually specify the caller on the incident differently for each rule now. We have the ability to set category and subcategory as well. So relatively simple things, but in Alert Sync 1, you would have had to have gone down the scripting route to do these things, whereas with 2, no need, which is great. And continuing along with this theme, in the case where you wanted to use the advanced scripting stuff in Alert Sync 1 for updates rather than simply for raising incidents. So by updates, I mean updates to SCOM alerts after they've been pushed across to ServiceNow, and incidents once they've been opened. You would have this one checkbox here called advanced updates that would enable 2 different scripts. And that was it. You had no other options. Whereas now, on the Advanced tab, we have our Correlate Server Down Alerts feature, the ability to specify what happens to an incident when the alert that generated it is closed. And then you have the same 2 scripts that you had controlled by one checkbox here. So you still have scripting options, but they're separated out. In Alert Sync 1, if you wanted to change the bidirectional sync feature, let's say you wanted to not have business service pulled into one of the custom fields, you would have to check this checkbox and edit the script, and that's fine. It's a really simple edit, but the problem is you also then had to create a script for updating incidents because they were controlled by a single checkbox, which is no longer the case. So if you still need to script, we still have the ability to obviously do that. It's a really important piece of the product. In Alert Sync 2 and beyond, it's changed slightly. Previously, in Alert Sync 1.x, if you wanted to specify a script, it would override and turn off some of the UI configurable things, so you then had to bake that behavior into your script. So for example, the ability to automatically map a CI, if you went down the advanced creation script route, that functionality was disabled and you'd have to effectively code it up manually yourself in the script, which is unnecessary pain. With the way things now work, all the settings you specify in a rule are set on the incident or task you're going to raise, and this script runs afterwards and will modify whatever values you put in the original incident, only if you've coded something in the script. So it's not an either or choice anymore, which is great. It means also that the use case for this script is more along the lines of mapping SCOM priorities and severities to ServiceNow incidents, impact and urgency fields. So you could say when a SCOM alert that is of high priority comes in, set the impacts to 1 and the urgency to 2, etc. Obviously you could have done this before, but you would have had to have coded up all the other bits and pieces that are in the UI too, which is great. And as I mentioned earlier, in the case of updates to alerts and incidents, they're separately controlled. So now if you just simply want to change custom field 4 to pull the state of the records, let's say, you just check this one checkbox and you still can use these other features, which is good. Good stuff. And final thing just to mention on features, this isn't one of my lovely holiday snaps, we now support the ServiceNow Paris release. Which is a simple one-slide thing to say, but quite a few of our customers are going to Paris and need that support. So it's now in Alert Sync 2. So enough slides. Let's actually see it in action. So now I'm going to go to my lab here, and we're going to start in ServiceNow itself. We're looking here at the creation rules. These look very similar to as they would have done, as you guys may be familiar with in Alert Sync 1. In terms of how my lab is set up, alerts when they come in go firstly and hit the wait rule at the top, which will hold back SCOM alerts for a period of 1 minute. Great for those flapping alerts, and then they're evaluated against the other bits and pieces here. But for the case that we're going to be talking about today, the only rule I'm interested in, because I know the alerts I'm going to push across will hit this guy, this one at the bottom. This is the rule we're going to look at. This is my generic infrastructure fail-safe rule to make sure that all SCOM alerts that are sent across get raised as an incident. So you can see here we've set a bunch of things. We said that we're going to raise incidents, not tasks or anything. All of these fields are set, so these will get set on the incident that's raised. But the main thing really I wanted to show you in here was on the Advanced tab, because the first thing we're going to talk about is correlate server down alerts. I'm going to show you this feature in action. And I'm also going to show you this one, what happens when you close off a SCOM alert. So just know this is already set up like this. So we've set this up to correlate server down alerts and to resolve incidents when SCOM alerts are closed. So next thing we're going to go to do is to go to SCOM, and we're going to look at some alerts. So this box here, infra AD 01, is currently dead. Health service heartbeat failure. Bad news. It's raised an incident ending in 138, and there's a bunch of other bits and pieces here that already have incidents, but there are some SCOM alerts at the bottom here, these guys, that don't have incidents. If I push these across to ServiceNow now, which in my lab is done by setting their resolution states to raise incident, that's just how I have this configured. What I'm expecting to see is, because the server is down, that these will get the same incident number as the original server down incident. So that is the one ending 138. So I've pushed those across, and we're going to give it a minute, and then we're going to have a look in ServiceNow. The other thing I'm going to do while I'm staring at SCOM is deal with some of these antique alerts. So as you can see from the age of some of these things, a bit of a history lesson here into what happened with this machine. But 64 days ago, the first one of these guys was generated. Clearly, it's a rule, and it's raising the same alert every few days or whatever. I want to just close these guys off. I want to have these incidents resolved. So I'm going to pick a bunch. Let's say these 10. So from 110 through to 120, and we're just going to close these guys off. I want to see their incidents get resolved, so we're going to close those guys off. Now we're going to go back into ServiceNow, and on our SCOM alerts, firstly, this is our health service failure heartbeat alert, which is this incident that we care about. This table is sorted by when the SCOM alert was created in ServiceNow. So if I refresh, we should hopefully start to see those two new incidents coming in. They might take a minute or so I may come back to this. We will see. Let's have a look. And the other thing we'll be looking for is on the incidents tab here. These incidents that I closed off the alerts for, these PowerShell script failed to run, these sort of 10, should go from new state to resolved. Rather than sit here and refresh this, I'm going to click into one of these incidents because these automatically refresh, so we should see the state change and a little green icon appear here to say state has changed. And that's what we're waiting for. So unfortunately, now we have to sit here and mash refresh and just wait, essentially. What I'm expecting to see is I'll get my two new SCOM alerts come across. So that is these guys here. Let's just scroll right. So they've been picked up by the internal connector, so they shouldn't be too far behind. So we should expect these guys to come in. The first thing that's going to happen with them is they're going to hit our wait rule, and they're going to be held for a period of time. Look, there they are. So they haven't got any incident assigned to them yet. If I click into one of these guys and scroll down to the rules, you'll see the wait rule has them at the moment. And on the history tab, you'll see they're being held by the wait rule for a duration of 1 minute, which is cool. No problem there. So back to the SCOM alerts. We'll give it a minute. And what we should see then is that the created record field gets the incident number, this one here, ending 138. So hopefully this shouldn't take too much longer. And if it does, hopefully, or what I'll do then is go to the incident that we're expecting to be resolved off. Give it a refresh. Nope, nothing yet. This is the downside of doing these live rather than pre-recording them, because I'd edit out this this waiting period. Okay, cool. Here we go. That wasn't too bad. So we have our heartbeat failure alerts, and we have the same incident here for these two alerts, which is great. So there we go. Really, really useful functionality. And then hopefully the same thing can be said of it's lost incidents now. Hang on. Incidents. Let's have a look at all of them. We're looking for the ones between 10 and 20. This may take a minute more, so I may do something else and come back to this again. I think that's what I'm going to do. So we're expecting these to go into the resolved state. The next thing I'm going to do then is if we go to incident creation rules, I mentioned looking again at our generic infrastructure rule that you can set some of these additional fields from the UI, impact and urgency being some of the examples I gave. You have 3 options in ServiceNow, and between these 3 they calculate effectively the priority of the incident that is raised, and I have these set to low and low. Now I would like to use my post-creation processing script, my default one, this guy here, to effectively say to change the priority, or by changing the impact and urgency of the incident that's raised based on the value of the SCOM alert. So I'm going to make sure this is now turned on. I'm going to update this to save that change, and we're going to find a SCOM alert. Let's use this guy here, another health failed to connect to computer alert. So this one has an impact of 1 and an urgency of 2. And if I pull up my rule in another screen quickly, nope, not that one, wrong thing. Creation rules, that's what I meant to do. And go into my generic infrastructure rule and just check out that script again. So what we're expecting to happen if I were to receive a new one of these, and I'm going to simulate that in a second, is that with an impact of high and an urgency of 1, as far as the script is concerned, if SCOM severity is error, which it's not, hang on, this is the incident we're looking at. Oh, I'm getting my wires crossed. Let's go back to the alert. SCOM alerts. Where is it? Failed to connect to computer. There it is. That's better. Priority high, severity error. So it is severity error, so it will hit this first condition here. So it is severity of error. What's the priority of this one? It's high. So what we're expecting to see is that with post-creation processing scripts, that the incident that is raised has an impact of 1 and an urgency of 2. And as you'll remember from the rule, the UI says 3 and 3. So to simulate this alert coming in afresh, so we don't have to wait for one to come in afresh, I'm going to go to this the incident/task creation tab. I'm going to clear the existing incident, which just I'll undo so you can see the number just to prove it's going to raise a new one, which will be 153. And I'm going to clear the rule, and then I'm going to save this alert, which will cause it to get reevaluated against those rules. And here we go, it's got a new one. If I go into this, what I'm expecting to see is, yep, impact 1, urgency 2. So that's post-process scripting working as it should. Really useful functionality and really good for dynamically assigning the impact and urgency based on what's in the SCOM alert. So, final thing just to check on demos is what's going on with these guys. Oh, I think it's complaining actually looking at these because the caller wasn't set. Oh well. I'm not going to spend any more time on this. You get the idea. What should have happened is the state should have been set to resolved, but there was a field missing, so it wasn't going to work. Oh well. So really cool new functionality in Alert Sync. Just before we kind of end this webinar, just a quick note on upgrades. So if you're upgrading from Alert Sync 1, the management pack side of things is a straightforward upgrade. It's simply an in-place upgrade. You import the new management packs over the old ones, as you would with any other management pack. The ServiceNow Store app, if you haven't used the scripts in Alert Sync 1, it's also a straightforward in-place upgrade. If you have used the scripts, there are additional considerations. If you've used scripts, essentially, because of the way we do scripts changing in Alert Sync 2, you may not need some of your scripts anymore because more is available in the UI. But also the functionality that you do want to port needs to be moved into post-creation process scripting. So there's a guide that explains this all on support.cookdown.com. And of course, if you have any issues in doing this, you can always reach out to support and they'll take you through it for you, essentially. But just worth noting that if you are using scripts and you in place upgrade the ServiceNow Store app, you will lose those scripts, which is why I'm putting this here. So there we go. All that's left to say is if this is the very first time you're looking at Alert Sync, go to cookdown.com/Alert Sync where you can take a trial or book a demo. And if you're a customer, keep an eye out for a mail from us with a download link into the MP. The ServiceNow Store app is live now and is updated via the ServiceNow Store. Okay, perfect. Also, just to say, we're on social media, as you would expect, at all the usual places, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and also we can be reached via email. And finally, before we go, just a quick cheeky plug for something that's happening next week that's quite exciting. We have the SCOM-a-thon workshop week next week, which is a free deep dive workshop session focusing on a whole bunch of topics. It spans the entirety of next week and it's entirely free. You register at scomathon.com. There are topics ranging from deploying agents and gateways to dashboarding to DB tuning, and these are practical sessions. So you get talked by an instructor through how to actually do these things with time to do these things yourself. So if you're interested, go to scomathon.com. It's all there. And all that's left for me to do is to say thank you very much for joining today's webinar. We're really, really excited by Alert Sync. It is a really, really massive release for us. The biggest since we launched it. And to see if there are any questions and to go find where the chat window is lurking in the background. Let's see. How does this work with ServiceNow resolution state? These go into a 5-day ServiceNow rule before closure. If SCOM alert reopens that within 5 days, does the incident reopen or do we get a new incident? Good question. So if you have the feature turned on where you close the SCOM alert and you set the ServiceNow incident as resolved, it will remain in the resolved state as per default for 5 days before getting closed off. By default, if another SCOM alert of the same type comes in, it will be raised as a new incident, so it will not reopen the same incident. However, on our support site, we have a script you can paste into the scripting feature to enable what you say. So in other words, to allow you to get the same incident to be reopened rather than a new one raised. Let's see. Oh, it's been answered by Dave Lewis already, so that's good. Are there any other questions from anyone else? All right, in which case, thank you very much for coming today. Look forward to seeing a bunch of you guys, hopefully, at SCOM-a-thon Workshop Week next week. And now I go into prep for that. Thanks, everyone.